Right, so we're going to use a pattern here. This pattern uses several different tools. And first of all, I'm going to show you how I would start off, particularly as a beginner, to get the right area of my parchment paper. What I do is I measure, and this is going to be your fold line. So I'm going to put a little mark there. I'm going to put a little mark there, and this is at 15 centimetres on my parchment paper. Join these lines up, and when I bring the pattern back in, you will see that we have on the pattern fold line. That white line that we've just drawn is going to sit on that black line that says fold line, and that allows us just to have enough room to be able to do this card. If you don't measure, you don't do your line, you could so easily misjudge where you're putting it, and then of course you're not going to have enough room to do this outer line. We'll just go back to the pattern for one moment. You'll see here it says main card, it says first layer, and then we have instructions for the label. So where we've drawn it, that would be the outer main card, and then this inner piece here is on a separate piece, and that's going to be the topper. Pop the pencil and the ruler to one side for a moment, because I'm now going to use low tag tape, and what I do is I fold it over to make a little curl. Pop it on. Now we know that's close to the border there, so I'm going to turn it round and pop it on the side there. And we do that to each of the four corners. Right, let's just get that on the line. Concentration there while we get it on the line. There we go. Now you can either use a mapping pen and ink, you can use a white pencil. I'm just going to do a little bit with my white ink. So because I've not used it for a few moments, let's just give it another little tip and get it mixed up. So mapping pen, burst the bubble if it will, there we go. Now back to my ruler. That would be how we'd normally use it, but we're going to turn it upside down so that it's not sat directly down onto your parchment, because if it was flat, what would happen would be that the ink would seep underneath from your mapping pen. Then when you took it away, you'll get a blob. So a little bit of ink. Now when you're using your mapping pen, you want to be slow and deliberate to make sure you've got your line. And we'll pop a bit more on. When you're filling your nib, do not move that ruler. Keep it in this same line. You will need to fill the nib a couple of times as you're going along. There we go. So once we've got our white line, oh, I can see I didn't quite catch it there, look, but never mind, we can go over that, or even when we emboss it, that will show much whiter. And then anything that needs to be done with the white, we do it now. So if you remember, what I said was draw it around, go with the nib flowing one way. So we do have to keep turning the paper around and around, as opposed to just moving your hand around. I try and get my hand settled in one nice, comfortable position. So we can go this way now, look, we can come back. And then it's so much easier, so much more comfortable working with any of the tools, not just the mapping pen, but any of the tools. And you continue tracing all the elements that you need to. I'm just going to stop at that because I'm only going to work in this little corner for you, just so we've got an idea of what we're doing. So before we do anything else, let's just clean that pen, and more importantly, let's get that top back on the ink so we're not going to spill it. So we'll pretend we've done all of the tracing that we needed to do. The next thing is we get our perforating mat, and we're going to do a bit of perforating. Let's get the 2 needle perforating tool. Now here, as you see, we've got semicircle. I don't have a semicircle tool, so we're going to use the 2, and we go only halfway through. Remember before I said about going all the way down into the mat? For this, because we're going to emboss, we're only going to go halfway. And I'm putting the needle in the last hole so that I'm making only 1 additional hole as I come round. And again, we've got some on the corner here, so we do those on the corner. In various patterns, you will see that this says either half perforate, semi-perforate, shallow perforate, but this is what we're doing. We're only marking these dots. It will always tell you a key on your pattern. In this case, the key here is red dots are emboss, blue dots are perforate, and that's what we've just done. We've just done the blue dots there to perforate. Now we're going to assume that everything has been traced with our pen and our mapping pen. We've done all of our perforating, semi-perforating, and we can now take off the pattern, turn our pattern over, and we're going to emboss. And for this, I'm going to use my 1mm embossing tool and just gently emboss around these lines that we've traced. There's a variety of different parchment papers, but what you do want is a nice parchment paper, not a vellum. A vellum is going to be too thin, and when you're embossing like this, you will just go straight through. When you're looking for a parchment paper, buy one that is 140, 150, or the heaviest you want to go is 160 GSM. If you go a little bit too heavy, it's going to be a bit difficult, particularly if you're starting off to emboss. So go with one of the lighter weights, and then you'll find it much easier. And if I just turn that over, we can see how white's that gone, and when you touch it, it's nice and raised, and that's what we want. I would leave that now, go on to another piece of embossing. We haven't got any at the moment, but if we had, I would continue, and we would work our way all the way round, and then come back to this area and start again for a second time, working all the way round, because the parchment paper works better if it's rested in between. I know that sounds a little bit silly, but it does stretch more, the fibres give more, and on the second time of your embossing you will find that it's easier and so much whiter. So we can see here we've got little star fan shapes, and that is done with our our 0.5 millimeter embossing tool because it's nice and fine. So again, we're on the back and we're just going to do a fan shape. I always start with the center one and then work my way out. So we're working from the center point and we're coming out just to give that little bit of embossing there. When all that has been done, we can go back to our 2-needle tool and we're going to now fully perforate. So we go in, whoops, come back, in, straight up, push it all the way down, and you can see that those holes are now bigger. And this is going to be ideal for the cutting. So you go into these same holes that you've previously made. You can actually feel them quite easily with the tool. And we work all the way around your card, which you will have, I haven't. And when we've done all of that, we can then cut the edge. So I'm using some snips here. Now the way I use them is not the way that everyone does. You'll find a lot of instructions and they tell you to use them this way with the points down. I like to use them with the points up. I get a better finish. So have a go, try both ways, see which way is more comfortable for you. And what we do is we put the little point into the 2 holes, you lower them slightly, you give a slight twist. This is very exaggerated so that you can see how we work. A slight twist and snip. Now the important thing is you pull those snips back. Whether you've got the tiny scissors or whether you've got the Pergamano, the parchment snips, doesn't matter. What you do is in and pull back. And that way we get that nice picot edge. So at the moment that's using your pattern, your mapping pen and ink, your embossing tools, 2 different sizes, perforating tool, your 2-needle, which is very useful, and our snips.